Rao or RAO in Wyoming. As soon as I hit the talk button, there we go. Helps to hit the buttons, right?
Hey
Rao,
it's RAO. I think we're friends on Facebook, but you said something in the announcements that just brought up one of the questions. Is it possible for God to drink an ungodly amount of Coca-Cola? I think we're getting into that burrito paradox, but
I have no idea. I don't know what an ungodly amount of Coca-Cola would be. I only say that because I'm currently drinking Coca-Cola, and on occasion I have had to have the camera focus on the other person because I had to run to the bathroom, and I suspect that all the hosts have done that at some point. So that was on my mind at the moment. So I have no idea what an ungodly amount of Coca-Cola is. But when you got to piss like a racehorse, you got to piss like a racehorse. So
trust me, I know. And I was like, while I was in hold, I thought about me calling over the years, and I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes expressing some gratitude because you guys have made me a smarter, kinder, wiser person through being wrong and getting better at how I understand and know things.
You're most welcome. I am kind of curious how that ties into your saying that inner monologues may relate to simulation hypothesis.
Yeah, that was my top. Because I'm in a simulation hypothesis group, and I was talking about how we could differentiate players from NPCs, and somebody brought up inner monologues, and that was just a really interesting thought experiment for me, and I wanted to run it by smarter people to see if there's any ground to it.
Well, I think my first problem with it is that if we're living in a simulation, everything is simulated. So there is no difference between an NPC and a PC, or there would be none. Having written very weird simulations in the past, including things like the Game of Life, I had to write a Dragon World simulation. Very, very primitive, but still kind of funny. There wasn't really any difference between PCs and NPCs. They were all just characters doing things according to the rules you set up. So I guess the first thing would be explain what the necessity of having an NPC would be and what that role would be played by. I mean, why would you even need it if you're doing a simulation? And the second problem is, of course, just simulation hypothesis all up by itself needs a ton of evidence to even begin to talk about what's possible and what's not possible inside of it. So I think those are my two things.
Right, and they're I don't think I've talked to you about it, but we've got with the lectures by Dr. Gates. We have the quantum eraser. At this point, we don't have enough evidence to say that it's a theory, but I feel like we still have a strong hypothesis with it with the evidence we have at hand.
Yeah, I don't know of what evidence do we have at hand.
Well, the Planck constants for one.
Why would that be evidence of anything other than the Planck constant exists?
The Planck, it's analogous to the frame rates in pixels that we see in every simulation. We have a Planck time that's the smallest measurable unit of time, which would be equal to a frame rate. And we've got a Planck length, which is the smallest measurable unit of space, and that would be equivalent to a pixel.
Yeah, now you're starting to sound like an intelligent design advocate, which is basically, when you get right down to it, that's all simulation hypothesis is, right? It's just another intelligent design hypothesis. It's not one that a creationist or a theist would agree with, but that's really all it is. And so in order to say, just because two things are analogous doesn't make them actually the same thing. And we have this thing called pareidolia for a reason, right? Where we recognize, where we tend to see
where there ain't patterns because we need to see a tiger in the trees, right, so we can get the hell away from it.
Well, our brain is a pattern recognition machine. That's what a neural network does and does best, right? Is recognize patterns. So we're wired that way from the get-go to see patterns. So how do you know that's just not a pattern we're seeing that doesn't actually exist? And also, how do you know that
I don't.
Yeah. So I don't see how that's evidence for the claim, right? I don't see how that's evidence for a claim. They're pieces, they're facts, they're things that exist, but I don't see how that's evidence, right? That could be evidence for anything. We can't say what it's evidence of, other than it exists. And to try and draw conclusions off that kind of thing, I think is entirely wrong. But how would you go about disproving simulation hypothesis?
Looking at the planks. I think that if we have rigid tetrahedron planks, we're in a simulation. If we have more roundish planks, then our universe is organic.
Why?
Why? Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Because I think the rigid shapes would be more analogous with pixels than something that was like fluid and like how electrons interact with each
Again,
other.
RAO, you're making a false equivalence to pixels. This thing about pixels, you're not demonstrating that anything to do with Planck length, Planck time is actually analogous to pixels. As Jim says, you're just kind of. It's kind of this pareidolia which is coming across. It appears to be that way to you. We have things that aren't round. In nature, we have snowflakes and we have honeycombs and things like that. So we do have things which aren't round in nature. This doesn't prove that we're in a simulation, and I think it's very tenuous that you're kind of going there, that it is kind of even any kind of evidence, even evidence which raises the probability, which is kind of for me a weaker form of evidence. It's not even that. It's just kind of you looking at one thing and looking at another and drawing an equivalence between them, which there is no evidence there for.
All right. And pixels are really an artifact of our display technology. There is no reason for them to exist other than the way that we have created our display technologies. Our eyes don't deal in pixels, for instance. There's no pixelation when we're using our eyes. So it's only when we digitize something that we actually get pixels. The rest of the world really doesn't exist in pixels. So you're comparing it to something that we created to say that it is created, and that doesn't seem quite right. We need to compare the universe to something else in order to determine if this is, created or not, whether that creation is, through a simulation, some sort of simulation technology, or created by a god. Either way, you need to first take the entire universe and compare it to another entire universe. But to compare the universe to parts that are inside of it don't make any sense. It's really kind of serious. Right
now we have a sample size of 1, and like that kind of sucks for a sample size. And
it's less than 1, right? It's less than 1 because we haven't seen the entire universe yet.
Good point. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out, Jim. We don't even have a full perspective of the universe, so our sample size is bullshit right now. And I think that we need both sides to continue investigating, looking into it, to just figure out what is the right answer. If I'm wrong, dude, I will tell you all flat out that I figured out that I'm wrong. But right now we just don't have enough evidence to say one way or the other. And I know that gets into that.
I disagree with that. I was going to ask you, RAO, what your position is, whether you was kind of coming at this from a thought experiment kind of way, or whether it was something you genuinely believed in. I think you've kind of just answered that for me. But I don't think it is, and theists sometimes go down this route as well of saying, well, we've got these two worldviews which are equally as likely. And it's not the case. It is simply not the case that they are equally as likely in the same as this. The simulation hypothesis is something which is not widely accepted. I forgot, was it Nick Bostrom? I can't remember.
If we're going to talk about probability, we know of more universes that are simulated than we know of universes that aren't simulated.
So no, we don't. We don't know of any universes that are simulated. No, we don't. That's
Oh
not a
no,
universe.
no, yeah. If you're going to say World of Warcraft is a simulated universe, you don't know what a simulation is. No, there's no World of Warcraft is not a simulation. Now, I have simulated a mining universe. That dragon simulation that I created was kind of a universe, but it was so simplistic as to be laughable to compare it to. We don't have.
We also have examples like No Man's Sky. Like I was thinking about games.
You can't compare. Yeah, I wouldn't use. There is no game that I would use as to claim that it's a simulated universe. There's just so for one, the universe is just too complex for that. Two, the universe is analog, not digital. And so that creates a problem. That creates a huge problem. I mean, we can go back to the 1970s.
PS4 has analog sticks.
Pardon?
My PS4 has analog sticks, and we're just stupid humans.
It's not stick. Well, I'm talking about the entire universe is analog, not your joysticks. Jeez. I mean, the entire universe. And let me give you an example of what that really means, right? So back in the 70s, before chaos theory became a part of science, a weather guy forecaster was running, keeping track of all these different numbers.
Like when they saved the information, they could only save 3 digits, but when they were running the program, they ran 6 digits, and then they ran the 2 graphs, and after like a month, the weather patterns were,
Right, and that's a problem. That's an analog world because 6 digits is still not accurate enough to keep track of the weather and to actually run a simulation of the weather. In fact, we don't have a computer capable at the moment of simulating significant portions of the atmosphere, just because it's too complex, but also because the only thing we have is digital and the world is analog. It's not digital. So to claim any game as being a simulation equivalent to the universe is just absolutely ludicrous. I think there is no comparison. If you want to do a real simulation, you need a computer powerful enough to handle the analog world. So,
yeah, I can.
You've given me a lot to think about.
Aveo. I want to try and put it in kind of terms that might kind of make it like blatantly obvious what we're trying to say to you here. If you take a state-of-the-art, multi-billion-dollar warplane and then take a toy Barbie car and say that they are the same thing because they are both vehicles. This is what me and Jim are trying to present to you. They are in no way, shape, or form the same thing. You just simply cannot compare modern computer games with the universe and say, well, we already have a simulated universe, because we don't. That's not what we have at all.
Well, when you're taking that little Power Wheels Barbie car, you can still learn braking, turning, the basic fundamentals of driving, and you can apply that when you get older and you get to that Murcielago.
Not really.
Well, you have to learn stick shift, and that's a whole. That's a whole.
No, you've got some other things to learn. Yes, the other problem you have is if you're going from a Power Wheels car to a real car, everything changes because you scaled up in size, which means you scaled up in weight, you scaled up in power. Yeah, they sort of kind of work the same, but they don't really for manipulating things. But I don't see how this is even remotely close to saying that games, no matter how massively multiplayer, are the same as an entire universe. That just, I mean, these two things are completely different things. You're comparing things inside the universe to the entire universe. And what you really need to be comparing is universe to universe. You need to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. And you're not doing that at all. You're comparing, first of all, you're comparing things that man made. Go ahead.
We need to get Michio Kaku back to work and see if he can find one for us.
Yeah, that's not even. I mean, we first have to prove that something can't exist outside of our universe, and that something can exist without time or space, which is probably a pretty good trick in and of itself. But you're just, I mean, it seems just so wild to me to take, oh, look, this is what us humans are doing. Therefore, some being powerful enough to create a analog universe like this one is thinking the same way we do. I just don't see that happening. I mean, we can look at the differences in a way humans and other creatures, fairly intelligent ones, dolphins, some monkeys, possibly squid and octopus, and look at how they do things. Their ability to manipulate. Pardon?
Octopus scare the hell out of me.
Yeah, they're fairly intelligent.
Those things are way too smart for their own good, or definitely too smart for our good.
Yeah, well, there's a really cool YouTube channel where they do things and put octopus to the test, so to speak, and they give them puzzles to figure out. And you can definitely tell when they're thinking about something.
From the inside?
Pardon?
Like unscrewing jars from the inside?
Well, that's just a matter of getting enough grip on the top of the jar to unscrew it. I mean, just because we can't do it.
Yeah, and figuring out what counterclockwise is. Like immediately figuring out this is the way to loosen the jar.
Yeah, but I mean, again, that doesn't take a whole heck of a lot of intelligence, but it does take some. But they're very, very smart, and you can tell when they're thinking about stuff. And there's some really cool YouTube channels where they make them do exactly that. But they don't think about things the same way we do because they don't manipulate the world the same way we do. They don't live in the same world that we do. They live in an underwater world and deal with things very differently. So to expect some sort of unknown alien being to think about the world, to think about things the way we do, I think is just ridiculous. To expect the technology to be digital, I'm not entirely convinced that we could even assume that. The reason we do digital is because it's easier to say that between, pardon?
We do digital because it's easier.
Yeah, it's easier, but analog is better. It's just harder to do analog. So again, there's a whole bunch of things here that you're assuming when you say that simulation hypothesis is something you can consider. And these are all things that we don't know. So I could say anything about a simulation hypothesis and be just as right as somebody who says something completely different from what I say that his simulation hypothesis, because neither one of us have any way to test anything. Nobody has any way to falsify anything. And remember, that's what you need. You need to falsify it. And if you can't falsify it, it's pseudoscience. And that's basically what I think simulation theory is.
That's what I'm looking for. That's what I've been looking for. How do I prove myself wrong? And
if you can't figure it out, it's pseudoscience.
Trying to do.
Right. And if you can't figure out a way to falsify it,
I want to break it away.
Right. So what does it mean when if you can't figure out a way to falsify something?
Put it on the shelf until you can.
No, it means you're dealing with pseudoscience. See, so there's a difference between figuring out a way to falsify it and being able to falsify it. Those are two different things. If you can't figure out a way to falsify it, it's pseudoscience. Doesn't matter if you can or can't.
Well,
and right now, nobody can. There is no way to.
I'm not extremely intelligent, and I'm pretty sure the live chat's going to verify that right about now. So, I just have ideas on how I might be able to figure something out, and I'm looking to people smarter than me to actually see if I have anything here. So, I love talking to you. I love disagreeing with you, so I can get more ground one way or the other. But I am trying to prove myself wrong. Trust me.
It's not about being smarter than someone else. It's about the way you're assessing claims. That's nothing to do with intelligence whatsoever. We can assess claims. You can learn how to assess claims in a way that makes them reasonable to hold. And it seems to me, if you believe simulation to be true, and you seem also at the same time to be saying, well, actually, I've no way of demonstrating it's true. So why do you believe it to be true if you can't demonstrate it to be true? Is it just a nice idea? because that's what heaven is to a lot of people. Do you think believing in God and believing in heaven's a reasonable position to hold? And if you don't, then ask yourself, well, why am I holding on to this when it's got the same amount of merit as that, just because it appeals to me as an idea?
Well, because I can disprove the Bible. The sun didn't exist until day 4, according to Genesis. So if the sun didn't exist until day 4, days 1 through 3 could not possibly happen. So, like, I can just disregard the Bible in chapter 1.
Why can you? What happens if, I mean, this is going off topic a bit, but what happens if the Bible's allegory and not meant to be like a word-for-word representation of what really happened? You kind of, it seems like I've rejected
story, so I'm still right. So
say that again. I missed that.
Like if it's just an allegory, then it's just a made-up thing that somebody said, which makes the Bible a work of fiction. So
that is pretty much what we've got with simulation theory at the moment, and yet you're clinging on to that as though it is true.
Yeah. What Richard's kind of asking is, what's the difference between you and an intelligent design proponent?
Intelligent design is trying to sell itself with, you know what? There isn't a whole lot of difference.
There isn't, RAO, no. Because intelligent design is trying to legitimize itself by claiming it's a serious scientific theory. And simulation theory is trying to legitimize itself by claiming it's a legitimate scientific theory. And they both have exactly the same level of merit to them being true. And that is none, because none of them have any evidence to demonstrate that they are in fact true, or even possible to be true.
Did the entire world just hear my brain break?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. I did want to touch on that when you do the intro, that Deuteronomy thing, Deuteronomy 22, I calculated the math, and that amount of silver is less than $400.
Okay.
50 shekels of silver is less than $400. Yeah. And that's in today's
Well, the fact that you think that the Bible thinks money, I think the fact that the Bible thinks money will solve the problems is the horrible part. Yeah.
And just like I calculated the math for fun because, you know, I kind of like I kind of like showing Christians what their Bible says. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that before I let y'all go. Yep. Thank you so much for talking to me today, and
you're welcome.
I hope I got a better spot next time.
All right. Good luck.
Thanks, Ario.
Much love, y'all.
Thanks, Ario. All right, bye.
That was great. I love that. Ario's been calling for a couple of years now, I think, and on and off on various different subjects. And one thing you've got to say about him is he's willing to kind of admit when the light has come on. And I really, really appreciate that.